Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 24 of the Backyard Banter Podcast, the Jack Bauer episode of the podcast. My name is Matt Harmon. I'm the host here of the show. Every time you tune in, we are here talking to some of the best people from the fantasy football community, football Twitter, all this and that. And today we have a great member of both of those communities. We have Patrick Daugherty from Rotoworld, or as he's better known by his Twitter username, Rotopat. Pat, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I got a number of initial thoughts. I couldn't think of what the 24th episode should be christened, but the Jack Bauer episode, no way I could have done better than that.
That literally just came to me right now.
Yeah, and then the Rotopat thing, I'm trying to learn to embrace it because my real name, Patrick Daugherty, it was like one or two characters too long to be my @ handle. So I had to I had to condense it down. And it was right when I was starting at Rotoworld, and I was like, I guess I could be Rotopat or Pat Roto, but I thought Rotopat was this unbelievably cheesy, but I just kind of had a screw it moment and went with it. And now, especially anyone at Rotoworld, Evan literally never calls me Pat. No matter what, it's and I am or on the phone in a conference call, it's just Rotopat. Everyone just calls me Rotopat, and everyone seems to love it and think it's actually cool. It's taken me a long time to come to terms with it. It's not super lame, maybe. But, it's part of my life goal over the next 5 years to embrace Rotopat.
There you go. It's important to have goals. I feel like that's a theme of this podcast is goals. So that's a good one that you've set for yourself right there. Hey, at least you don't have the heinous underscore in your username, which...
I'm not a second-class citizen.
All right, cool. Thanks. I appreciate that. But it is, Matt Harmon is a pretty generic, there's 1,000 Matt Harmons, and I don't know. I just went with the underscore back when I was first starting, and now it's I can't change it because that would change too much of my life.
Can't do it. Screw up the hashtag brand. And
absolutely.
Patrick Daugherty seems like an uncommon name, but there's a lot of Irish people with Irish ancestry in America here, and literally one of my best friends is named Patrick Daugherty. I'm D-O-U, and he's D-O-U, and he's literally one of my best friends. So that's kind of surreal and weird.
That's tremendous.
A surreal Rotopat fact right there.
Wow, there you go. Does he have a username that people call him?
No, he's not really a member of football Twitter. He's a member of football Twitter. English football is his game.
The superior football Twitter. I get it.
Yeah, probably. So one of my best friends has my exact name. So growing up, I thought it was this weird name, but it's actually not.
That's a tremendous fact. If I was ever to do a contest with this podcast and podcast trivia, that would definitely be one of them.
Which guest has a friend with the same name?
Exactly.
Evan was not one of my best friends is named Evan Silva. Isn't that mind blowing? Yeah. Only I can provide that. So.
Seriously, that's unique content. Another theme of the podcast. You're checking a lot of boxes here right away, Pat. This is tremendous. So anyways, let's get to you a little bit here. I always start the podcast asking the guest, how did you come to kind of fall in love with football or fantasy sports? Take us through kind of your history into coming into your own here.
Oh boy. Hopefully if I get long-winded with this too, just because I feel when I tell my origin story, which really is not interesting at all, that I can get way too long-winded. But,
listen, we're all writers. We're all inherently egotistical people, anyways. So if you get long-winded, it's right on cue with everybody else. So don't worry about it.
Yeah. So I don't know. If we're gonna start from the beginning, I was one of those kids where I was obsessed with sports. Probably age 6 or 7. So I'm from St. Louis, and I think the summer where I turned 7 was 1993. And for whatever reason, I think maybe I'd been into sports a little before that, but hadn't been crazy about it. For some reason, the summer of 1993, the switch flipped where I became a Cardinals fanatic, which, is part of the deal in St. Louis. It happened sooner or later, but it happened to me when I was 6 and 7. And that summer, so I was a 6 or 7-year-old kid. And that summer, I started following the team every day. We didn't have cable. I don't even know how many games were on cable back then. But sort of really followed the team. I started reading the paper every day. And I felt a pretty precocious kid, reading the sports page. And somewhere along the line, I don't know, I became one of those kids where I got obsessed with statistics. And that was kind of the origin of my sports just somehow when I was 6 or 7 years old, I got obsessed with stats, and it just kind of all took off from there.
That's interesting. Yeah, and it's like a kid reading the paper. That's pretty impressive. I don't know anything about baseball. If you listen to the
I think I've heard you say that before. Yeah.
Oh, certainly. And I will say there's a lot of things, and the guys at NFL can definitely back this statement up. If I have an opinion that is controversial, I will often like or like a contrarian opinion, I'll often be like a little more pushy about it than I really intend to be. Like, I don't despise baseball, but to be an ass.
You despise baseball,
right? But to be an ass, I will definitely play up that. And so anyways, but I've heard that the Cardinals are like the best fans in baseball or some stupid thing like that, or
okay.
That's sarcastically thrown around from a lot of my friends at work that follow baseball.
Yeah, I mean, so the origin story there was like, so McGuire came to St. Louis in like 98, and like attendance like skyrocketed, and it was like right as the team kind of settled in, this like humongous 2-decade run they've been on. And at some point, maybe I can't remember if it was Sports Illustrated or the Sporting News, declared St. Louis the best sports city in America. And then like the year 2000, like the Cardinals kind of ran with it and used that marketing to, I think it was like the year 2000, the Cardinals like took advantage of that and started marketing the fans as the best fan in baseball. And yes, it's kind of taken on a life of its own, both negative and positive over the past 15 years. I think they are great fans. To me, it's unfortunate. Part of it's like, it comes with winning. Like, people don't like the Spurs. People don't like, not that the Cardinals are on the level of the Yankees, but like you compare the Cardinals to probably like someone like the Spurs who've like won a few titles in like 10 or 15 years, and you can just get sick of the teams that are always winning. So I that's part of the story I tell myself, at least, why people don't like Cardinals fans. It might not be true. We might just all be obnoxious idiots.
Yeah, I don't know. I just have noted a few times that we've been out at happy hour, and like some of the guys will pull up like posts of there's like Twitter accounts that like are just retweeting like awful Cardinals fans. Like,
I know. Okay, that really annoys me. So that, this is the worst excuse, but like that's the kind of thing where you could do that with any fan base. Not to excuse the racist, homophobic, awful Cardinals fans that tweet death threats at like, really nice people. But that's the kind of that's so cherry picked to me. And again, it's an unfortunate part of sports fandom in general. And I think maybe the Cardinals are just the unfortunate losers of the lottery, or the team that got like really highlighted for that. But yeah, I would like to say that's in no way, that's like 0.05% of the fan base. That's probably an underestimate, but.
Sure. Well, I don't even know why I just decided to go down this road. I guess it's always because, like I said, I can't even convey that I have any interest in a topic related to baseball. So I never ask them like, guys, explain this to me, because that goes off my shtick there.
Well, the Cardinals thing, it's gotten so bad where this year, literally every I don't know if they're doing it for the wins. I think they're only doing it for the losses. Every time the Cardinals lose this year, Deadspin is doing the post on it. It's like the Cardinals lost their 21st game last night, and they do like a short post on it. And they seem committed to doing it for every loss. So that's going to be a nice feature of the summer here for Cardinals fans.
There's a lot of games in baseball too.
Yeah, so I mean, that's like a big time commitment, but they seem ready to follow through on it. So
hey, all the more power to you, Deadspin. I guess I'm not allowed to like Deadspin. I think as an NFL employee, I think that's part of the contract.
Oh yeah, I think their biggest rival was Breer, and he's gone now. So maybe now you can like them.
I'm also not allowed to admit that Albert Breer ever existed on planet Earth with the way that he.
Aggressive tight policies, I know. So yeah.
Yeah, right. I'm kidding. And nobody from work is ever going to listen to this podcast. That's for sure. Or at least nobody with the ability to fire or hire me, I hope. Fingers crossed. Yeah. But anyways, yeah, let's get off that subject really quick. So Pat, how did you ever get around to deciding that you were going to take your passion for sports that you had growing up, and especially statistics, and take that into covering the sport? Or actually, no, don't answer that question. Before we get to that, talk to me a little bit about like your origins with fantasy sports.
Yeah. So, okay. Going back to like the beginning. So like the whole point of the Cardinals thing was that was kind of like the gateway drug, to the rest of sports. And so like basically from that age on, like I started consuming like all the sports content I could, which there was lots less of in the 90s. So like, it's like reading the paper every day, reading Sports Illustrated every week, just whatever I could get my hands on kind of. And didn't have cable, which made things a little more complicated. But a lot more sports was on TV over the air back then. So it basically didn't matter what the sport was, unless it was like NASCAR. Besides like NASCAR, I watched like literally every sport. I was super into baseball. Got very into football. Was extremely into the University of Mizzou. Liked the Blues. Loved the NBA. It was Michael Jordan's heyday. Like I even loved like tennis. Like I would watch like Andre Agassi and Pete Sampras, and so I just had this like unabiding love of sports, and was also a pretty big reader. And so at some point along the line, I just decided, I don't know really, maybe when I was 15 or 16, that I just didn't want a normal job, and like my dad was my dad is, I was not gonna talk about the past tense. My dad's alive. He was a cartographer, a map maker, until he was like probably 40 or 41, and he had like kind of like a midlife crisis, and went to law school and became a lawyer. And so my dad became a lawyer, and I was kind of like, I don't know if bombastic story. I was very energetic, and I like loved to talk, and I loved to debate. So people were always telling me like, oh, you should be a lawyer. You'd be a great lawyer. And then thankfully, probably the smartest decision of my life was wanting to not be a lawyer. And just, somewhere along the line, high school, I just decided I'm not going to have a normal job, and just writing seemed like, I wrote for the high school paper, and I applied to Missouri Journalism School. And thankfully I just decided I didn't want a normal job, and I actually somehow succeeded in not having a normal job. So,
that's pretty good stuff. I know I went through plenty of phases of non-traditional jobs, and I guess I'm here. I guess I'm here now, so that's good stuff. What was your first ever experience though? Like trying? Did you ever have a job before working at Rotoworld, or did you dive into it?
With another fantasy sports company. So part of the high school paper, they like kind of like confirmed that maybe I could do the writing thing. So I went to the University of Missouri Journalism School, where I was like very involved with, it's a big J school. They have like all sorts of papers. I was like very involved with all the papers. And for some reason though, in college, I didn't do any sports writing. Like, I think I always kind of like secretly knew that I could do the sports writing. So I don't know if it was like a subconscious way of like challenging myself. But in college, I was like more like arts and entertainment. I was like the arts and entertainment editor of the independent student newspaper for a while. And so like I wrote like almost the entirety of my college career. But then when it came down to the wire, like the final few months, my senior year, we got to start applying for jobs. I basically like exclusively applied for sports writing jobs. And even though I basically had no clips in any of that or anything. And I don't know. I've already left out the part. I was already huge in fantasy sports at this point too. And unbeknownst to me, as I was like getting down the stretch in college, I discovered a fantasy sports company in St. Louis, which I had no concept, I had no idea it existed, called Fanball. It is, you probably don't know it existed because it went out of business shortly after hiring me, but it was owned by Liberty Media. It was like a real old school fantasy company, and it got bought by Liberty Media at some point, which is DirecTV, or it used to be. Now I guess it's AT&T or whatever. And, I've really lost focus here.
It's hard to keep up with all these companies, that's for sure.
Before Rotoworld, long story short, didn't write about sports in college. I decided to write about sports even like when it came down to the wire. I got a sports job with a St. Louis-based company, and then I worked with them for like probably like a year and a half, and then they went out of business, and then I got my job at Rotoworld.
Okay, so kind of backing up there a little bit. So you went to school and got a journalism degree, or do you went to a journalism school?
I did. I went and actually got a degree in magazine journalism, and most people who would get like a journalism degree will tell you it was like worthless, or like it's not the way to become a writer. And you definitely do not have to do it to become a journalist or a writer. Like, I mean, like probably like 95% of my favorite writers like took no formal journalism training or whatever. But I was one of the few people who I did it, and I found it very useful. And I would say it's not a bad career path. And I'm losing my train of thought, but I went to journalism school and enjoyed it.
Yeah. What do you think it is that because I was obviously going to ask you, like, because that is always a big debate. One of those like Twitter come to Jesus moments is when the entire timeline kind of starts debating whether journalism school is worth it. And you've got some on the side that, went there and say it's not, some that say it is, that went there. Like Patrick Laban was on this podcast and, he said it, he went there and he always asked the question like, well, was it worth it to you or whatever? And obviously it was worth it to you. But what do you think it is about the people that say that either, didn't go and still say it's not worth it, or the people that did go and say it's not worth it? What do you think that mindset is that causes that reaction?
I don't know, but it's probably what it boils down to is that it's really the most important part of being a good writer is obviously writing a lot. But I've found the entire time the most important thing is reading a lot. I feel like you have to read as much, if not more, than you write. And I get the feeling probably people who admonish the J schools, they probably kind of discovered the secret that really, I mean, you learn so much more by just actually doing. And so that's why J school is not necessary. But in J school, you do, to me, it helped provide structure and helped with some of the finer points. And probably maybe the most important thing is you get to work for these papers and you develop a sense of camaraderie with all the people and you make friends, you make future connections. And so that's probably the more important part of J school. And, that's expensive for just that kind of thing. So that's why you definitely don't have to do it, because the most important parts are reading and writing, and you don't have to go to any school for that. But I would say it helped with maybe for me, I just needed some kind of structure and something to funnel me on my career path. And I think J school definitely succeeded in that regard.
Yeah, well, I mean, everything is not the same experience for everybody, and everybody, needs different things. That's
probably a huge, big takeaway from your podcast series, is what I'm guessing, is that no two paths are even remotely the same, really. Let alone
absolutely. There are some similar themes to all the episodes, definitely. Don't be an asshole is one that gets brought up a lot.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it is a very good one, and unique content. But yeah, you're right. It's all different experiences that everybody brings on and shares. So getting into the part about Rotoworld, obviously, actually, and I'll give an unsolicited plug here. You were on the RotoViz series, the Fantasyland, that they just recently, their last episode was about the building the Rotoworld empire.
Yeah,
it's really good. You guys should definitely, if you listen, if you like this podcast, you'll probably like that one too. It's essentially like a better organized version of this. Maybe not.
It's it's much more no, it's two different things. This is the nice freewheeling open discussion that was always intended to be a focused history. So yeah,
definitely
different things. Definitely check it out.
Yeah, for sure. Definitely check it out. And organization and structure. It's not a Matt Harmon thing, that it's for sure. Not a Backyard Banter podcast thing. But kind of getting into that, Pat, a little bit. So obviously you went from this one company that went out of business. Did you just see the job opening on Rotoworld? Because Evan Silva was obviously on here recently, and his path to get in there was mostly through pestering, it sounds like.
So mine is a little different. So my job at this old company was doing the blurbs like we do at Rotoworld. It was so Fanball was it started as an offline magazine, they would make previews for everything, but at some point it became a website. And I don't know when, it was clearly before I was there. I guess they decided to compete with Rotoworld on news blurbs. But the big problem was that they didn't have specialized blurb writers. So they had specialized blurb writers, but not per sport. So I got hired to write blurbs, but I had to not only do football blurbs, I had to do baseball, hockey, and NBA blurbs. So you'd do an 8 or 10 hour shift, and you would just be scrounging for news, on literally every sport. I'm doing blurbs about who's starting in goal for the Atlanta Thrashers tonight, while also catching up on all the broken legs, the NFL or whatever. So you have to cover this immense amount of material. There's just no way you can reasonably do it and stay up and everything. So a lot of it basically involved going to Rotoworld and stealing their links. And so, Rotoworld's got all these nice football blurbs up, and there's no way I could keep up with everything. So, I'm saying, what does Rotoworld got up? So I find their link, and then I was I hadn't seen this yet because I've been reading about the NBA and the NHL the past hour and a half. So basically, by necessity, I became obsessed with Rotoworld. And I was I couldn't stay up on the news, but Rotoworld's always up on the news. So Rotoworld I read Rotoworld probably more than my own site. And that was basically where I got my football news. So obviously I wasn't stealing the hashtag takes, but I see the news, and that was I got to write about this. So that's how I first discovered Rotoworld, was by straight up stealing their links.
Nice. Well, hey, listen, I think a lot of us still do that to this day.
Yes, yeah, I'm sure they do, and it's nice, to be part of the company now that like, we're obviously we're an aggregator when it comes to news, but yeah, I no longer have to focusing on one sport obviously helps immensely in that. So, but yeah, it's nice to now be the person who has his links stolen as opposed to shamelessly stealing the links.
Yeah, that's how you know you've made it, when you were one day doing the task that now others are doing to you.
Yes. Oh yeah. So then, anyway, I was obsessed with Rotoworld, but then through real serendipity, and I think I kind of tell this story on the RotoViz podcast where Evan Silva is from St. Louis, but he's lived in Chicago the entire time I've known him. But through a friend of a friend of a friend, I was in a fantasy baseball league with Evan. And so I had this real flimsy connection to Evan, but I had talked to him a few times about making trades or whatever. So I had talked to him just enough to be able to not be completely scared to send him an email or whatever. And so literally the day Fanball went out of business, I sent Evan and Drew Silva emails listen, my company's going out of business. I love Rotoworld. I've got experience writing blurbs, and do you guys need anybody? And basically kind of a total shot in the dark type thing, but it just turned out be literally the exact right moment that they needed someone. And so I got hired but to Rotoworld without ever doing anything resembling an interview. They're just oh yeah, we really need someone, could you maybe do a tryout shift on Sunday? And then I did, and that was kind of just got the ball rolling from there.
Well, the theme of that though, the takeaway there is to just do something, to just do it, because which is always an important theme, but to your story, you never know if the timing is actually completely perfect on their end.
And I have that's an unrepeatable career path. I basically sent an email on the exact right day, but yeah. So I mean, it's not I can be oh, what you got to do is wait for your company to go out of business, and then literally the day it does, email Evan, because I don't think we've hired anyone like that since then, but. Yeah, I mean, the reason I was qualified to do the job was, I had been blurbing for one of the only other sites that did blurbs, but you said, you just got to do. I mean, if you're not writing, you'll never get hired anywhere, and even now in the industry, you won't get hired anywhere if you don't have a nice backlog of writing and catalog of writing, and the only way to get better at writing is doing writing, and and then you got to read the stuff you want to write about. So if you want to be a football writer, you got to be reading around the league every day. You got to be reading Rotoworld blurbs every day. You got to be reading Pro Football Talk every day. And just reading it, the style and what people are looking for kind of subconsciously seeps in. So I don't know. I feel I've been talking for 5 straight minutes.
No, that's okay. I don't think you have. To that point, what are some of the sites that you most enjoy reading, or you feel helps you the most in growing as a writer?
What helps me the most in growing as a writer is not any sports websites, and it's probably the casual reading I do in my spare time. Just finished a book about Napoleon. I read a lot of historical biographies. Been trying to read more fiction, and that stuff just kind of helps because any reading will provide some sort of inspiration, subconscious or otherwise, and you'll subconsciously take anything that you read. You'll subconsciously take things from it. Maybe just a word, something as simple as a word, or But yeah, what helps me the most, I think what's helped me the most as a writer is to just read a ton. That's my favorite hobby is reading magazines, books, obviously lots of other sports content, but the thing I could never impress upon people enough is to read as much as possible.
Yeah, that's for sure. And I know as somebody that does not read enough, especially during the NFL season, it's I feel
it's not easy. Yeah, I'm not out here reading 2 or 3 books a month. I probably read 6 or 7 books a year, which is probably more than the average person, but it's by no means some Herculean. I'm not some master reader or anything, and it's it's kind of a slog sometimes, and I can't recommend reading enough.
Yeah, even just reading other people's articles, even writers that I like in the football industry, it's hard. That's why I love podcasts. Keep up.
And so as an example of kind of what we're both trying to get at, I think. So in college, I was the arts and entertainment editor for the Man-Eater, the Mizzou like independent student newspaper. Like a pretty big part of it was just doing things like as simple as running like CD reviews or movie reviews. And like it was so obvious when someone would come in and had like never read Rolling Stone or never read Blender or never read Spin. Like they wanted to write about music, but when they wrote about it, it sounded like they had never it sounded like they had no concept of like what the style of music writing was. Whereas then someone would come in and you could tell that like, oh, this kid has probably read every review in Rolling Stone for the past 5 years. And it's the same thing with fantasy football writing, where like if you're not reading enough of it, I mean, maybe you'll luck into like your own unique style, but I mean, there's certain rhythms, even amongst all the unique personalities in the industry, there's certain rhythms that people look for and certain kind of content that has to be there that you just might not ever learn if you're not reading enough.
Yeah, that's definitely for sure. So what were your early days at Rotoworld like? What were you're obviously just blurbing and different things like that, but so is that mostly what you're doing there to begin with?
Yeah, it was not very glamorous. So I was doing football and baseball, but I was definitely in that stage of my life where this is another piece of advice. I hate giving advice, but like another piece of advice is when you're young, like I was then, I guess I was 24. Yeah, I was 24. And so like even though there were lots of things I wanted to say no to, I just said no to nothing. Like anything they asked me to do, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll blurb on Christmas night from 9 p.m. to 2 a.m. Like I just said yes to everything. So like the first few months I was there, I would literally work Friday nights. Then I worked 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. on Saturdays. Then I worked 7 a.m. to 1 p.m. on Sundays. And then I signed on again at 3:30 on Sundays to do baseball for like 4 or 5 hours. So basically every shitty thing they asked me to do, I just said yes. But so it sucked for like a year or two, but then, you get better at your job, you become like a member of the team. And then, now before long, you're not working every waking hour of the weekend. So that's another thing is like, you gotta say yes. I mean, if someone asks you to do something, it's not, you have no idea if, even if it seems like a crappy opportunity, you have no idea if even that crappy opportunity will ever present itself again. So don't view anything as too small to say yes to.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point. Something I think that I've tried to do even now, even still in my career. Like anybody asks me to be on their podcast, I'm probably, I'm going to say yes. I'm going to make time for it, which is actually pretty stressful. I should probably start saying no more often. But whatever. I
say yes to every podcast. The one thing I say no to too much, and you have to start, is for some reason I say no to like random radio hits like too much. I get like really nervous and daunted by like, going on radio shows I've never been on before because you have no idea how some of the hosts like basically lob like the biggest softballs ever for you. They'll give you like 2 or 3 sentences of an intro or makes the answer so easy. Or then other ones will just be like ask like a 1-sentence question and like expect you to have like a bunch of stuff ready. And so I don't follow my own advice with radio hits, but everything else, say yes.
Yeah, that's a very good point. The radio is tough, man. Like especially because you never know. That's a great point. I've never thought about that. Like you never know what kind of style the host is going to be. Whether they're going to be somebody that like goes back and forth with you, or if they're just like question, now give me an answer. Question, now give me an answer.
Yeah, exactly. And that's the hardest thing to do. The guys who just lob the rapid fire questions without interjecting any of their own. And I like doing the radio, but it's to me by far the most stressful part of the job. Whereas podcasts, usually it's like one of my friends and it's more relaxed. And whereas the radio, I don't know, it's just not like that.
Well, and I can tell you, and we were talking about this before we started recording, I can tell you and I are the same way, that we're long talkers that explain things out and all that sort of stuff. And you can't be that way on the radio. And that's I'm trying to get better at that too.
I feel like legitimately disastrous radio hits or like in the middle. Like sometimes the worst too is sometimes when you kind of have like you kind of know what they're going to ask you about and you kind of have like a pre-planned answer in your head, then you kind of lose your wording a bit and you start fumbling and like really like just using way too many words to say something simple, or like you completely lose your train of thought. And I've had a few genuinely disastrous radio hits.
Yeah, and the fact that the one challenging part about the radio too is that for the most part these things are live. Like,
Yes.
if you blow, like if you were to blow it on this podcast right now, you could just be like, okay, take that out, Matt, and then I would.
I've already done that 10 times. You've taken out like 10 different.
That's true.
Yeah, I've said.
Yeah, that is true. Like that one thing you said could have definitely gotten you fired. That's for sure.
I'm not even going to get into it.
Yeah, let's not even go down that road. You've killed a lot of friendships here, but luckily it's all been edited out. But no, yeah, it's different on the radio because you say it, it's like, oh shit, that's out there now.
Yep. Yeah, and all the people of Indianapolis think you're a moron.
Yeah, it was funny. I was listening to the Live in the Stream podcast this morning. While I was walking my dog, and JJ was joking about all these cities he can't go into anymore because he's written some sort of like Oakland, the Derek Carr take. Indianapolis Star quoted him about Andrew Luck or whatever.
Oh my God!
Now he can't go to Dallas because he's
who's he truthing now?
Well, it was the Ezekiel Elliott thing.
I had to figure it had to be Zeke. Well, another quick aside on the radio is like too. You go on like a radio show in Indianapolis, and like, the Indianapolis guys, their job is to know everything about the Colts. So sometimes like you get caught off guard because something to them that just seems like secondhand knowledge, you can just like freeze, and in the moment you're like, I have no idea who the Colts right guard is. Right. And it needs to be upgraded. Whereas to them, they know everything about all their teams. So that's always been, that's never happened to me really, but that's always been like my biggest moment of panic. Like, are they going to ask me about some guy that I clearly should know something about and I just know nothing about them? So yeah, when you're dealing with like a hyper focus, they have a hyper focus, and that can be daunting sometimes.
Yeah, luckily the only radio show that really ever asked me to be on consistently is the guys WFNZ in Charlotte. Shouts to those guys. They asked me to be on a lot, and I know pretty much the Panthers backwards and forwards, unfortunately. But Pat, kind of getting back to you and Rotoworld, the one thing that I obviously talked to Evan about this on the show, and you guys talked about it on that Rotoviz podcast as well. There's a unique style to the Rotoworld blurbs, and I think you guys are very well known and famous. And Evan on his episode said that you're the best at writing the blurbs for a number of different reasons. And it's that element of like a little bit of snark and kind of keeping things fresh. I know most people obviously celebrate that and think it's cool and kind of freshens things up. Other people I've interacted with have said they don't like it. Why do you think that is important and to do in the blurb writing business?
Well, first off, Evan is still the best blurb writer. Like he will claim it's me, but Evan's like one of the great. Evan's such an amazing writer, and he sets the standard still in every area of Rotoworld, including blurb writing. But to me, like the snark, the style, or whatever, you certainly can't overdo it. Like you can't have every single blurb having so much hashtag Mountain Dew attitude or hashtag edge, but like you can get boilerplate news anywhere, and like it's like what hopefully sets a Rotoworld blurb apart is it's not just like this perfunctory reciting of the information, and we try to give our honest takes, and we try to make you want it to be entertaining to read. Is that like such a bad thing? Like it's gotta you can read 10 different places on the internet about Dante Moncrief having turf toe surgery, but you come to Rotoworld because hopefully it's slightly more entertaining to read. Maybe the news hopefully is better facts, more interesting things. But yeah, I mean, you can read like the straight up boilerplate NFL news anywhere, and like I think it's one of the reasons why Rotoworld is so popular is because it's not just like this robotic regurgitation of news.
Yeah, and it's never like you guys go so far as to like spin the news in any way.
No. And like, we try. Nick Minzio doesn't always succeed, but we try to keep it lighthearted. We're not like, out there like with vendettas or like trying to like hurt people's feelings. I'm sure we have, but we try to keep it genuine. It's football, it's sports, and this is not life or death here. And should have a little fun reading football news. So try to keep it lighthearted. And
yeah.
It has to be informative first and foremost. But yeah, if there's a little joke every once in a while, it's a really good thing.
Yeah, don't take this so seriously. It's a game about a game, as JJ said on his episode.
Oh yeah, football Twitter, man, can be, obviously I love football Twitter, but it
hmm
can be a bit over serious.
Yeah,
And like yeah, I probably try too hard, but I like trying to bring a little humor to the football Twitter.
for
And
sure.
yeah, and it's just, it doesn't need to be so serious. I mean, we're literally all love writing about a sport. A, it's a sport. B, it's only 16 games a year. I mean, you got to fill the time with something. You can't just, we're not, it's not all like, I don't know. I'm just rehashing whatever I said, but yeah, it can be a little levity when you're writing about freaking football.
Yeah, for sure. And it's like Uncle Chaps says, football is not a game.
What is he? Is that all he says?
Yeah, football is not a game.
Being Chaps, I thought there had to be a kicker of some sort.
No, that is the kicker because it is a game. I guess I gotta have Chaps on the podcast sometime, like just to throw a wrench into this whole thing. Like,
well, Chaps is not only funnier and goofier than all of us, he's also, I mean, had a much more serious previous career than any of us as a United States Marine, I believe, right? So
yeah.
To say Chaps is a unique story, it'd probably be underselling it a bit.
Yeah, for sure. So he'll definitely be on the show, which will be great. Like, how do you become a sports writer, or how do you become one of the greatest internet trolls of all time?
How do you become having ESPN reading your fake Olivier Vernon report on air?
I'll
talk about that for 2 hours, Chaps.
Yeah, talk about serious. That was
the
serious
reaction
business.
to that was swift condemnation.
Absolutely. Thank you, ESPN. That was one of the best days ever. Yeah, that's tremendous.
It was genuinely surreal. I felt a little bad when they're all on TV, like so earnestly providing this analysis about how the Jags front seven has improved so much in these past 2 years. It's clearly humiliating, but again, it's football.
It is football, but the funny part is like seeing, obviously working at NFL now, like seeing the process of like how things go to get from Twitter to then on TV. Like, I couldn't believe that nobody, and I don't know why we're talking about this right now, but like I couldn't believe that at no point somebody's like, wait a second, that's not Jay Glazer's tweet. Like,
is it pretty stringent at NFL, or is it looser than maybe you expected? Like fewer barriers between Twitter and TV than you were expecting, maybe.
I would not say it's fewer.
To me, it's always been kind of stunning. Where I feel like is the higher I've got in the industry, but industry meaning going back to like my college days, where like everything I wrote got edited like 4 or 5 times, to now, I mean, basically after being at Rotoworld for 5 years, I can basically write whatever I want and put it on the site, like with, let's just say, very little editing.
It depends on this is a great little sidebar too. It depends on what your department is. Like for something to get on NFL Total Access, it has to go through a few meat grinders first.
That's probably good.
To get on NFL.com/fantasy, not as much. There's a great, and I don't know what week it is. I wish I could mention it. And like I said, nobody that would care would listen to this podcast. But there's one of the, like, we do a player by player like breakdown matchup articles. There's one week where when Jimmy Graham was healthy and he would just like, you could just never predict what he was going to do this year. Marcus wrote his player preview in there, and all he wrote was the shrug emoji. And like, because like I was the one that like me or somebody else was the one that edited it. And I was just like, well, that's going right through.
Yeah, it's got to go through, obviously. At Rotoworld now, I was saying that we started occasionally using hashtags and blurbs. I don't know if people have noticed that, but
that's tremendous. Yeah.
And also, even Rotoworld blurbs have to abide by some sense of decorum and decency. And there have been times where I wish the analysis could literally just be K period or lol period. I've thought about doing it once or twice in the past, but I haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah, right. Like a super coach speaky thing. Like,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Just
the Titans, Dexter McCluster's going to get 10 to 15 touches per game this year. And then I wish my analysis could just be K period. But I haven't quite worked up the courage to do that yet.
Now that'll be the day. So now if I'm ever scrolling through Rotoworld and it hasn't gotten flagged already, I would see.
It will be me. It will be me. Yes.
Yeah, it's definitely you. That is pretty funny. So kind of actually somewhat getting back to, I don't really ever know if we had a point, but somewhere getting back to this whole thing. You mentioned that obviously like you started off strictly writing blurbs. How did you ever get to the point where, you started to kind of take on more than that? Like now you do the rankings article every week there at Rotoworld. How did you kind of start getting more onto your plate?
Well, it started just because there was stuff that needed to be done and like no one wanted to do. Like probably I was only strictly blurbs for probably like 2-ish months, but then like the baseball season rolled around. And, Rotoworld, we do have a premium section, obviously, with premium content, premium articles. And a lot of times those are like the premium articles are always very good on the baseball side, but a lot of times it's like not super glamorous work. It's like a lot of like kind of like numbers crunching type stuff and like just kind of more like just not glamorous work too. It's behind a paywall, so like not everyone's going to be able to see it. And so sometimes I feel like maybe it was hard for them to find people to do it. But I got offered to do like two, like kind of like this, like I can't remember what they were. One was called the Impact Report. I have no idea what even like the thesis of the article was supposed to be. But so yeah, it just came back to again agreeing to do stuff even if I didn't want to do it. So like agreed to do these 2 premium articles. No one really wanted to do, I think, the premium chat that year. For some reason, I was like, I'll do the chat. I love to do the chat. And so yeah, that's just. I said yes. I put as much on my plate as humanly possible at one point and hoped I would be allowed to keep some of it there. And thankfully, I was good enough at some of it to keep some of it there. It's the long story short of how I expanded my repertoire at Rotoworld.
That makes sense. I feel like I've subconsciously done the same thing at different points in my little career. I always like to air quotes that.
I should definitely air quotes my career too.
Yeah, my job. That's very true. So how did you ever get, I mean, and this is actually just kind of me being curious, more so than anything. You mentioned like you were very into baseball and all that. What made you kind of go down the football section? Was that your own choice or was that like the company's choice? Did they get better at it?
Football, of course, is the most popular. I mean,
I really just wanted you to say that.
No, of course, that's part of it. What it really came down to is that the football guys just took a shine to me, and like Evan has definitely been like my mentor, and like Evan just liked my writing. Chris Westling, I think, liked my writing. Hope you did, Chris. And I love the baseball guys. I love DJ Short. I love Drew Silva. I love Ryan Boyer. But for whatever reason, just more quickly formed like a rapport with the football side. And I probably did both sports for like 2 years. But then I think my 3rd year at Rotoworld, I was down to only 1 baseball article. And Evan like went to my boss without telling me and just goes, take him off the baseball article. He's going to be all football from here on out. And this is kind of how it happened. So
drop the hammer.
Yeah. Which no, it's good. Obviously, I love baseball. I still love baseball to this day. That's another thing. If you're going to be a writer, it helps to have a specific focus, and dividing your attention between 2 sports obviously might be in theory fun for you, but you might be missing things from the other sport, and you're not cultivating maybe as strong a possible audience as you could with maybe your stronger sport. So yeah, unfortunately, fake sports is like real sports where at some point you probably got to specialize.
No, yeah, that totally makes sense. Kind of winding down here, just a few more questions for you, Pat. One thing, just kind of interesting. If I would say that of the people that cover fantasy sports, and there's a lot of interesting and unique personalities, I would say you have a very well like crafted personality, and like this, you're like you mentioned, your sense of humor. Like you're very obviously a very funny person, and I
actually don't know if I am, but I definitely attempt.
Well, I just said it, and it's my podcast, so that makes it true.
Well, I appreciate it.
But so what are you, just kind of one of those guys that's just like you're just being yourself all the time, or does that, like, any thought ever go into that? Like I remember listening to you on like the Two Mugs podcast with Rumford Johnny, and him like always pointing out like your little quips or and this or that. Is there any like crafting that goes into that, or are you just kind of
I guess for better or worse, for some reason I literally think in quips, I guess. And there's no real planning or foresight that goes into that. For some reason, So yeah, I've always been obsessed with sports. I guess at some point I got obsessed with trying to be funny, and it's just like a maybe like a new, I don't know what's the word. What's a different word for subconscious besides subconscious? But it's like this became like a chemical focus for me at some point to try to be funny. So my brain now like seems to be wired. It's like the best option is always the funniest option. I have no idea why, but yeah, I basically think in quips. Like when I'm not on the podcast, I'm just like looking at things and like trying to make jokes like, about my fan and about like this coffee mug with a rooster on it, this dumb, stupid rooster.
Oh, that's precious.
Yeah, it actually is. I love it.
Hopefully everybody's watching the YouTube broadcast to see that. If not, you're really missing out. That's for sure.
Being funny, I have no idea how any advice on being funny. It just kind of happened. I don't know why.
Well, there are definitely some people in this life that are not funny.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Have like no real comedic sense of humor. Or anything.
I say a lot of the fantasy industry can be. I say there are a lot of big personalities, and there are also some personalities where you need some dry, sober analysis too. So yeah, some people are purely numbers based, and some people are more concerned with making bad jokes than giving good fantasy advice. So
yeah, right. I'm just trying to get a tweet retweeted 500 times or something like that. That's really all my goal with any piece of advice out there.
I had that happen like literally twice. I feel like it should have happened more. I'm really bitter about that. But,
honestly, the only time that like I ever had a funny tweet like go off was when I tweeted I think when the Panthers beat the Seahawks this year, and there was that like really perfect shot of Richard Sherman and Cam Chancellor kind of looking up at the camera and with these like exasperated faces. I tweeted that out, and like the reaction, like this is when Cam Newton carves you up or whatever, and Greg Rosenthal and the Around the NFL account retweeted, and I was like, I couldn't get on the internet for like
when you have a successful tweet, it's like I've never been never much of a substance user, but when you have a really successful tweet, I have to imagine it's what it's like being like as high as humanly possible. Like it's like being on like cloud like 40 and you have a tweet that takes off and like, yeah, just checking your mentions and like, yeah, it's like the greatest feeling in the world, basically. That's what I live for. That's like all I live for at this point.
Seriously, I'm just here for like the like little cry emojis to get put in front of my tweet. Like that's all this life is really about. Other than that, I think I've accomplished plenty of stuff. Just those are the most.
You have accomplished like all seriousness. You've accomplished something really important. We're like, I'm still kind of working on this. We're like, you need to have, if you're going to be like a writer, you need to have something you can be Googled for. Like, not just a name. Like you, Matt Harmon, can be Googled Matt Harmon reception perception. And like, that might be a good way if you're trying to make a name for yourself. Like, think of something you could be like a kind of article you can become known for. I guess at this point, I'm Patrick Daugherty rankings, which isn't really that exciting in the fantasy industry. But like, if you can try, obviously you should try to find your own niche. I mean, that's like really standard advice, but like that's something I started thinking about one day. It was like, what could I be Googled for? Like if someone was typing in Patrick Daugherty and like if I wanted them to type something other than just Rotoworld, like I need something I can be Googled for, like Evan Silva matchups, Matt Harmon reception perception, Patrick Daugherty rankings, and like so maybe I don't know if you're kind of stuck with your writing, try to think of something that you could become Googleable for.
Yeah, that's a really good, really tremendous piece of advice, and also checks off the box of you have to compliment me at least once on the show. So there you go. That is something that has to happen every episode. It's a requirement. So if you're out there, you want to be a guest on this podcast, remember that.
Save up a really good one. Yeah, you can't. No one else can compliment reception perception. No, and either I've claimed that one.
I think everybody's done that. No, there's not really many other nice things to say about me, to be honest. The rest of it.
I actually love the sweater.
Oh, thank you. This is one of my favorite sweaters. A female complimented it once, so I'm like, okay, this must be a good one.
We've never taken it off, basically.
I'll take 5 more. Thank you. No, but Pat, I just kind of a few more, like I said, a few more questions here, and this one I've just been asking people a lot recently, and for whatever reason, I've enjoyed. I have no idea if any of you people listening do, but like, what's something that you see in the industry or on Twitter, the way people interact? We obviously already talked about like people being too serious, but What's something that you see out there that you don't like or wish would change about our world? Not the world at large, just the fantasy football world.
Well, the thing about Donald Trump is
here we go.
I don't know. I don't know what my hangups with football Twitter are. Football Twitter, I feel like the sense of camaraderie has been really big kind of in the fantasy football Twitter lately. I don't see as much petty sniping as I used to. Maybe those people have kind of been like weeded out. I don't know. Unfortunately, I don't have a good answer for that. I guess maybe anyone who annoys me, I just mute them.
Yeah.
Which is muting things kind of dumb. It's cowardly. You should just unfollow someone if you don't like them. But I've got a few muted people.
Yeah, I've definitely mostly. If you remember, if anybody listening remembers, I did make the unfollow flow chart a few months back. So you can always refer to that if you need to help on unfollowing somebody. But I mute people like for some reason, and this is annoying, and I don't know why I do this, but like I like to mute people more than block them. Like not people that like people I follow, but people that follow me and then like say shitty stuff in my mentions. I'll mute them because I feel like I don't want them to know that they got on my nerves so much that I had to block them.
I have the same philosophy, only I don't mute them either. The people that like will not stop like tweeting shit at me. Yeah. I don't even block them anymore. I blocked like a few. The only people I've ever really actually blocked are the people that will just, it doesn't necessarily have to be like super mean spirited, but the people who have not ever like stopped tweeting at me, like every single tweet, and like, usually in some negative fashion.
Yeah, for sure. Those people are intolerable. Like really the only, like you have to really, really be bad for me to block you. Like if you say some really racist, really homophobic, or like you say the R word in my mentions, I'm probably going to block you. Like that type of shit is intolerable to me. But yeah, like I had one guy yesterday, like because I said that John Brown greater than Brandon Cooks or whatever, and he would not, like he sent me literally I think 15 tweets and like could tell he was like getting annoyed more and more that I wasn't responding.
Yeah. So the only people, you don't even necessarily have to be a huge jerk, but if you like can't stop with a torrent of tweets, that's probably the only person I'll let block anymore. Whereas now even like when they say like the super awful mean stuff, I don't even block them anymore because I feel like that just bothers them more than like actually blocking them. So like I said, I try to abide by just complete ignoring.
Yeah, that's why I like the mute because they don't know that you did it, and they're just kind of screaming into the void. And
I probably should mute so then I don't see it anymore.
That's what I have to do because I'm the type of person like if I see it long enough, like I'll want to respond.
I know. I thankfully with Twitter, I have like a reputation for being like, I guess like snarky or sarcastic or whatever. But I try to on Twitter, I try to avoid feuds. It's just stupid or like huge arguments. So I think sometimes there used to be like a misconception that I was like mixing it up a lot on Twitter, but I try to avoid anything. Like I try to be funny, but I try to avoid any sort of feud or like stupid, dumb argument. It's a poor use of Twitter.com.
Yeah, that's for sure. Even like honestly, just like player debates on Twitter. Like I've sworn myself off of debates that I know that pre-debate I know are gonna go, I think this way. Well, I think this way. Well,
I know. It really is like purely political at this point. We're like, you're not gonna change your crazed neighbor's mind about the politician you like. And it's unfortunately become the same thing with John Brown and Brandon Cooks.
Yeah, right, exactly. Like we could
I haven't really delved. Oh, sorry.
No. Go ahead.
No, this is way too off topic. But I haven't really delved into yet to why Brandon Cooks is so unpopular this offseason.
So unpopular or popular?
Unpopular. I've seen lots of people doing hashtag exposures of him.
Oh, really? Huh? I mean, this is very off topic. But I don't know. I think that I find it the other way. I find that he's like an incredibly popular player. Like anytime you tweet anything, like Brandon Cook's Twitter is fierce, dude. They will come for you.
No, I've noticed a lot of the respected members of fantasy football Twitter kind of going in on Brandon Cooks lately. I need to investigate this more.
I don't think he's bad, but I don't think he's as good as other people think he is. Essentially like my point with him.
He had such a weird year because I feel like people like really kind of expecting him. I thought people went into the year thinking he was like super overhyped, which he was.
Yeah.
People were kind of waiting for him to just be awful, but they ended up actually being pretty good for fantasy.
Well, I guess, and this breaks my, no real football talk rule on the podcast, but just to my 2 cents on it would be that, like, when he was kind of early in the season, when he was like their number one, like only real option in the passing game,
that was like his worst part of the whole season. You're right.
Like, I remember Patrick Peterson, like, just pressed the hell out of him. He couldn't ever get open against the guy. And like, when defenses looked at it like that, Cook struggled. But then when Watson, Willie Snead, those guys emerged, then Cook started to produce, because I think
That's a really good point. Yeah, now I understand. And sorry, God forbid, we should not have sidetracked the podcast.
Sidetracked a couple of fantasy football writers talking about football. No, that was bad. That's bad taste, Pat. We're ending the podcast right now. No, but seriously, thank you so much for your time, Pat. I always give the guest one last shot at the floor on the show before I yank it out from under you. So, anything you want to say before we get out of here? The floor is yours.
One story I wanted to share, where I'm pretty sure Evan said this on your podcast, where a really odd similarity I never knew I had with Evan. I don't think it was the road of his podcast. I think it was making on your podcast, where he said growing up, where he would like create like elaborate like fake careers for like fake players, or like he would like create his own personal little statistics. And I did that. Like, I had like notebooks full of like fake players, and I would like come up with the stats for like their entire career, or I would come up with stats for like an entire season, like an entire football season, entire basketball season. Like, I would do like every game for like a fake made up team in my head. And I just was very shocked to hear that Evan also did the same thing. And that's apparently the secret to success, is you got to be a bit of a weirdo growing up and have notebooks full of fake sports stats.
Yeah, man. No, well, being a weirdo growing up, I at least definitely fit into that archetype of.
Yeah, I think we probably all did. So
we're all definitely a bunch of dorks that just happen to have a platform now. I
think that's unfortunately about as fair a characterization as you probably could have had.
That does seem to be the case. Well, again, Pat, thank you so much for your time. This was a great conversation. I think people really are going to enjoy it, and especially because I edited all those inflammatory things you said about
Please, God. Yeah, I mean, don't even send that in a text to me afterwards. Like, I can't believe you said that. We can't have any recorded. That can't be recorded anywhere that happened.
Absolutely, certainly. Thank you. So it has been taken care of, and everybody listening, thank you again so much for tuning in. It's always pretty incredible that you guys continue to listen to this show as much as you do. So definitely thank you guys. And please, show your appreciation by sharing the show, rating and reviewing on iTunes, all that good stuff. You know the deal. But again, thank you all so much for listening, and I hope you learned something today.